Thanks everyone, and let's dive straight in. So let's set the scene. Get real. Can the Southwest really be a world-leading tech cluster? I think when you, I'll put some questions to you. When you respond, it'd be really good to introduce yourself as well briefly in terms of the organisation that you're part of, that kind of thing. We've got the on-off mute buttons that people can use as well in terms of, it's a big panel, but we'll try and get around as much as we can. And obviously people, please do put questions in the chat as well. We'll keep an eye on those. So last month, Tech Southwest was at the G7. Our TriTech podcast presenter, Robert Hillier, interviewed the head of the World Bank, David Malpass, and he asked him, to become a world-leading tech cluster, what should the Southwest do? And he said, learn from the best. And he cited the Cambridge model, the Golden Triangle: know your strengths, build out some universities, attract the very best talent. But of course, no two regions are the same. The Southwest is geographically large, it sticks out, we've got cities spread around it, we've got Bristol at one end, this huge urban area. It's a similar population size to some very successful tech clusters. We've got Israel, Norway, and others. But we have many specialisms, many different specialisms: marine, health, robotics, fintech, quantum, AI, data, clean tech, environmental futures, agri-tech. People, please put in the chat all the other ones that I've missed. Of course, there's loads. So it is complicated, which is why I'm delighted actually to be joined by fantastic guests from across the region who could help us navigate this complex arena. So I'm going to dive straight in. So let's go to you, Marty, and please introduce yourself as well as part of this. So a large region, many specialisms. Is that a foundation to build a truly world-leading tech cluster?
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Marty, Reid. I'm head of Engine Shed, which is an enterprise hub led by the University of Bristol. So I agree. I think the region is interesting because it's characterised by such a breadth of technology and innovation across so many different disciplines, rather than, say, having a specialism that we across the Southwest are known for. I mean, if you ask people, what is our strength, depending where they're from, you might get biotech, you might get fintech, you might get microelectronics, space tech, and it's great in one sense because it feels like there's a breadth of activity, there's always a buzz of things going on, but there is challenges with it, and particularly around larger scale investment and larger scale programs, whether it's UK Gov or institutional investors, funds or VCs, either there isn't a big area to put your bet behind, or for investors it can be difficult to navigate such a broad spectrum of things. And so I think occasionally we can get negative press because of that. But on the other hand, I think there's reasons to be really excited by where we are, because firstly, there's been rapid growth right across the Southwest. So maybe it's natural where we are just now that this is bubbling along in this critical mass. And a lot of what we see, the areas, even though they're diverse, there's a huge amount of focus on impact-led tech, whether that's in changing the world through biotechnology or opening up access to financial markets for people. In each of those areas, there's real impact-led stuff, physical technologies. We have less across the Southwest of a big culture of multitudes of SAS businesses, although I recognise there are some, but we have a lot of that. And I think as we've been growing, there's also lots of the spirit of collaboration highlighted by this very group is stronger, even though we've grown and we're over such a disparate area. So when you bring those together, the breadth, the huge continuing growth, that real impact-led technology and the collaboration, it creates the conditions for really exciting tech that could really, really grow, multi-sector stuff, fintech, cyber, where you're bringing people together. And I think that's why there's reason to be excited that we could go on another level.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you. Right. That's a really good sort of starting point around it. So positivity there. So Sally, coming to you, I mean, what does world leading actually mean? And, should that be the vision or measure of a successful tech cluster, or is it more complex than that?
Well, I think, when we looked at the Southwest yesterday, I think my comment was it's a huge area and there are very different drivers. If you're government, you might look at it and say it's all Bristol and Bath and the rest of them really great at cream teas and things, but we know that's not the case. And I think if you took the whole of the Southwest and said, right, well, we could certainly probably fit Cambridge and Oxford and London in the area of our world, we don't split up that part of the UK. What we're trying to do is to say we've got a very different socioeconomic climate, we've got very different population densities, And we're trying to make sense of that in a very different approach. Then you come to say, what does world leading mean? Is it about deal flow? Is it about growth of the companies? A couple of years ago, I sort of put out the hypothesis that said, if we got a Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg came in today, number one, would we recognize it? Number two, could we provide the land labor capital to enable that person to achieve what they wanted to achieve, which is build a unicorn? And I don't think we're there yet. And I don't think that's a problem. I think it's a level of ambition, and I think it's the fact that our community, our region, has to understand that it needs to achieve a lot more if we're going to get there. I think that's a challenge. We already have great companies, many of whom are doing really well. It's about what more do we have to do working together to make that happen.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sally. And thank you for your questions coming in. And straight away, people are thinking about the geographical location, the perception of South West as being stuck out on the side of the UK. Is that an impediment? And and investors understanding our kind of our region and economies of scale, that kind of thing. So we'll cover some of that as well. Patric, can I come to you now? So please introduce yourself and where you fit in this ecosystem. I'm going to give a hint of that by referencing in the question. So what's your experience at Falmouth University, I suppose, in terms of focusing on your strengths? It's having a well-defined specialism or set of specialisms, game development, etc. Is that an advantage in a national and international sense?
Thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Patric Eriksson. I'm Deputy Vice Chancellor at Falmouth University, responsible for research, innovation, and commercialization. Specialization, absolutely. I will go to, I think it's all about talented people and building communities. That's the key. And we need to be the place and where they can pursue their missions. Studies showing in Europe now and in the world that graduating students, they are not moving place because of jobs. They are moving about the place attraction and its community. So we really need to be attractive to the individuals in a much broader sense than we are, I think. And games, that's an area where we have been growing significantly over the years. And that's a great example where we're actually attracting talented students from all over. And the most inhibiting growth factor for the international video games industry is recruitment, access to talents. So if we can really provide to be the place having the talents, we can and retain them, then we have a good opportunity. So what we are doing is really, as an institution, providing our graduating students new investments, everything for them to enable creating their own future here down in the Southwest.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Patric. So let's get an electric car and drive all the way from Falmouth up the M5 with minimal hassle around charging points to get to Monika in Bristol. So yeah, please introduce yourself as well. A lot of people know who you are, key in the Bristol tech scene. But are you seeing one of the ways we come, I suppose, into the world leading is you create, you develop, and support the growth of those world leading companies. Is that happening in Bristol? Are you been seeing that? Have we got the evidence there?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dan. So I'm Monika Radclyffe. I'm the Centre Director for SETsquared Bristol, and we are a high-tech, high-growth incubator set up by University of Bristol. And we're in a fortunate position that some of the alumni that have come out of the incubator are already world-leading. Excellent example, we have Ultraleap, and you've heard from Andres at the beginning of the session. It's an excellent example, company set up 2013, grown to now 150 people with offices all around the world. But I think the key factor to become a world leading is actually, be based in Bristol, and it is now possible, but think globally. So you can still reach out to investors across the world and attract investments, from US, from Europe. think about your customer base being global and scale, but retain that base in Bristol. And I think that has changed in the last decade. I remember the stories of members of SETsquared at Bristol, back in the 2000s, whenever they did receive an investment from a US investor, they were required to relocate. But we, the likes of Graphcore and Ultra receiving, huge amounts of investments from international investors. The investors actually recognize the benefits of being here and the talent base and the engineering capabilities that are in the region. And I think that is something we should emphasize.
Thank you, Monika. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, some great, Graphcore, etc., and others. So Toby, coming to you, one thing Patric mentioned there about creating those communities, the talent. Head forwards, you've always been focused on growing that wider tech ecosystem. Software Cornwall, Agile on the Beach, Tech Southwest. Why? And is that part of what's required to build a brilliant and world-leading tech cluster?
Yeah, I think you do need that sort of supporting evidence. It's all about perception, isn't it? The question about can we be a world-leading tech cluster or tech region? The answer to that involves how do people outside perceive the area, and you've got to demonstrate what you're doing. So one of the reasons I set up Agile on the Beach as a conference was actually to demonstrate that there was lots of interest in tech and lots of companies that wanted to understand about Agile and software development in the area. We still get about a third of the people attending the conference from Cornwall or from the Southwest, I think. The rest come from other parts of the UK, other parts of Europe, other parts of the world. But it does, I always hear comments from people saying, oh yeah, didn't realise there was like a software, such a strong software industry in Cornwall. So actually doing that then actually helped us recruit. Picking up on Sally's point about, we don't have enough people. I think that's changing. Certainly, the 10 years that Head Forwards has been in existence, we've always been able to attract people into the area. I wouldn't say it's always been easy to attract people into the area because, of course, the first question was, is there really, this sounds great, great company, you've got a great ethos, great culture. I really want to work with you guys, but, what happens if it doesn't work out? Are there any other jobs in the area? And when we set up Software Cornwall, that demonstrated there were loads of other jobs, loads of other companies in the area. So that helped change that perception. But more recently, COVID, I think, has really demonstrated that people are sick of working in big cities. People want, lifestyle.
I may disagree with that on the call in Bristol, of course. So Cornwall laying down.
Well, Bristol's quite, I was born in Bristol. It's quite nice, but I live in Cornwall. And I think one of the things is that there are more people, an increasing number of people that actually don't want to be doing the 3-hour commute into London and 3-hour commute out of London each day, or they want to, and in London you do have to compromise. You have to compromise. Do you want to have a long commute, or do you want to live in have a big garden and that sort of thing? But what COVID has demonstrated is that we're seeing in Cornwall house prices are going through the roof because lots of people are now working remotely. People understand that they can work remotely. So I think the idea that natural local talent is limited is actually, I think that's less of a challenge than it ever was. Certainly 10 years ago, we proved it wasn't a problem when we started Head Forwards, and over 100 people now, one of the strongest development capabilities in the Southwest. We're still able to attract people from all over the world. So I don't think it's a problem.
Okay, well, interesting. I'm going to move it on because it's something we haven't heard from yet. So and there's some good questions coming in as well that sort of touch on a lot of this in terms of James Ashby talking about work nationally, but based in Plymouth. And actually it kind of shifts where you kind of hang out in these kind of communities and your focus, which I think is an exciting opportunity for the Southwest. So Peter, you were enterprise editor at the Sunday Times, now running Southwest Tech Daily. Every region is pushing for national or international recognition. Do some do better than others, and if so, what works? I'm not asking for the answer, but what did you see in that role in terms of And was the Southwest just seen as this piddly kind of this where everyone goes on holiday, or has it shifted? Is it shifting?
Yeah, it certainly is shifting. I moved away 15, 16 years ago, and last year moved back to Devon, and the whole sort of narrative had shifted, is shifting. I think the reality is, and everyone has to accept that seeing tech as the future is not a particularly radical thought, and every cluster in Britain and probably the developed world is focusing on tech as their future. What the Southwest has to do and is doing is form an identity that historically has been a big problem for whatever reason, for squabbling politicians, for councils not getting on, not talking, for the geography of getting from Falmouth to Bristol.
Nodding. Everyone is nodding.
Yeah, but what is interesting, and some of the comments are sort of reflecting this, is COVID has genuinely changed that dynamic, in that people who wouldn't previously have spoken to each other because they couldn't get in a room together, now that's perfectly natural, and that's forming cross-region relationships that wouldn't previously have happened. And through that, I think my feeling is overcoming that geographical issue. My concern for the Southwest versus other clusters is that there are too many specialisms. We're very good at lots of things.
You mean too many specialisms in terms of the narrative?
Yeah.
Sure.
Like you look at Cambridge, I think Toby might disagree.
What are you saying?
Specialisms. We think about the Cambridge medical cluster. That's a knowledge around medical, biomedical science. When you talk about tech, and you're talking about software, the technical capability that enables a tech company crosses verticals. So software and tech supports all sorts of industries, all sorts of businesses, and therefore the tech industry is kind of, well, I think the old way of thinking about specialist clusters like the Cambridge biomedical cluster, that's the old way of looking at things. In the modern world with tech, what you need is people that understand how to create technical solutions. And that it's a new paradigm, I think.
Yeah, very briefly, and I know you're going to move on to. I guess I'm thinking it from the perspective of outsiders looking into the Southwest and assessing it as a tech cluster with a distinct identity, and I'm not sure people do that at the moment.
And one of the things you can look at is, like, you can look at specialisms, you can look at the vibe, you can look at the joined up, thriving, bubbling community, and different ways of actually selling yourself to the world, in terms of how you kind of slice that cake and present it, I suppose, and actually the more joined up you are, the more you then can come to a kind of view on that. And of course we all sit, Bristol sits in the Southwest, but it also sits in other geographies and other, and as in Cornwall Space Tech and the photonics in Torbay, they sit in an amazing international cluster, and actually, and bringing that to the table. So let's keep moving on. Thank you for the comments and the questions and the conversations in the chat as well. So coming back to you, Marty, big focus Engine Shed. More and more is that scaling up bit. There's been incredible growth in Bristol, new initiatives coming along, science creates, etc., and of course across the wider Southwest. What concerted efforts now are needed to help specialist companies go on and scale up? We're talking about that's an evidence of success. It's just one evidence, one kind of metric, one measure. But what's needed now for that scale up aspect?
Yeah, and probably reflective of the specialisms discussion, I think we've got a disproportionately high number of early stage tech startups. I mean, the number per head is incredible across the Southwest, but probably less real keynote examples of scale ups, aside from the few, that Monika mentioned earlier, like your Ultraleap Immersive Labs and GraphCore. But numbers wouldn't have as many, and you can either see that as huge potential or huge latent potential that's being held back somehow. So when you look at how to support scale ups, the kind of traditional things you pick on are investment, talent, access to market, and then there's some leadership things. I won't go through them all in great detail, but on investment, I think there's the attraction to the outside, i.e. the curation of everything. And I think there's been really cool progress made on that. The investment activator program in the Bristol and Bath region has been fantastic. I know Ben's already mentioned the chat. There's some great activity to try and coordinate it, and Tech Southwest are a great curator. And then also we've seen the emergence of regional funds, which a lot of us talked for a long time as being a gap. Science Creates, the increase of investment from renewable ventures alongside BTEC. So it feels like that's gaining momentum. On talent, every scaling business you'll talk to has a talent gap. And at the same time, we're talking about the lack of accessibility of the tech sector also, and worries about reskilling and upskilling of people. So it does feel like that's two sides of the same issue. That there's lots of good projects going on about accessibility into tech careers of disadvantaged people or people from different backgrounds, whether that's by region or by ethnicity. It does feel like there's more of a concerted effort there, treating it as the same thing, that the talent gap is accessible career paths. Tech is a great opportunity for vocational pathways. You don't need to have a university degree to be a really hot coder. And you don't need to have been doing it from the age of 16 to be a fantastic coder working in a finance house. You could learn at any stage. So there's a great there. But it's the very final point, because it links back to the discussion on specialisms. I think the big opportunity there is focus on some key sectors that bring in different specialisms, and it's probably bringing Toby and Peter's points together. The specialism, the breadth of capability is a bad thing, but you need some big anchor projects or sectors, but they could be something like cyber, which brings together data analytics and quantum and a bit of defense, or it could be fintech that brings analytics, financial capability, coding, and we need large institutional support, whether it's a mix of UK Gov, universities, and probably corporate links, so that you get a link between the big market challenges right through, and you have an anchor to gather investment or talent programs around. I think pulling our institutions together to deliver something like that, and with a bit of focus, is needed.
That's very comprehensive, Marty. Thank you. That was wide-ranging. Cool. I think fascinating, and it shows how complex and multifaceted it is really to kind of achieve this. So Patric, from your side,
we may have lost Dan.
Oh, Monika's lost me. Can others still hear me? Yeah. Okay, I'll carry on. So Monika, that might be just a problem with you. I'll ask a question to Patric, because you came to the Southwest from Sweden, so you were an outsider, and now we've welcomed you into this wonderful part of the world. But you were doing things there as well. And can smaller regions achieve that global recognition? Have you got examples of how you did that, perhaps in Sweden, that you now have brought to bear in the Southwest?
I think Sweden is a very good example, as it is a country on the outskirts of Europe with a very small population, and thereby a very small internal market. And you all know of the global unicorns like Spotify, Skype, Minecraft, that's all emerged. And I think it is because Sweden, since the 1800th century, has always looked at the global market from the get-go, and building the business with a global outlook. But that also means that you definitely need to be out there, be at the global scene, and you can't wait for the world to come to you. But we have seen where very small regions, like the very, very far north of Sweden, were very successful recruiting and getting the investment of Facebook's biggest large European data center, and a huge tech cluster has emerged around that. We have Northvolt, the investment now in the greenest and the largest battery capacity factory in Europe, recruiting talents from all over the world, because it's not the talent is not there, but it's the place is all the investment and all the talents. So definitely, but given what been the discussion today, I think you need then to have a very niche where you're focusing.
And linking that, Patrick, to the chat. I mean, people talking about sustainability as a kind of potential overarching anchor between these different niche specialisms. That's a really kind of, again, other regions will be doing the same, but but we have a unique kind of a mix of landscapes here as well that you can play into that. Interesting point from Dan. I don't know, Sally, if you want to quickly respond to this. My concern is that so Dan is head of digital Ministry of Justice and based in the Southwest, and my concern is that the Southwest it's too internally competitive. It results in the likes of Plymouth versus Exeter, rather than having a coherent and consistent narrative for the region. Further, our investment focus remains primarily on the urban centres rather than our amazing rural and coastal communities. Would you agree with that, Sally, or disagree?
So thank you. I didn't introduce myself as Chief Exec of Exeter Science Park earlier, but I responded to Dan and said, look, a couple of years ago, I think it was within a year within a few months of taking on my role, I was invited to Plymouth to a breakfast meeting. And I basically said that you could lose the whole of the Devon population in the daily commute to London at that time. And therefore that we need to look outside, and the danger is we can be quite inward looking. And I think we do need to collaborate and look outside because we've got a really good story. And so I think Dan is right. My impression that is improving hugely.
Yeah.
Both, I think a lot of the institutions in different areas are talking really well together at very senior levels and wanting to make things happen.
Yeah, and the fact that this panel was a represent, Engine Shed, SETsquared Bristol, Falmouth University, Exeter Science Park, Head Forward, Software Cornwall, Southwest Tech Daily, Tech Southwest, and all the other things. That then kind of links into points that we just lost Monika. Just we're running out of time, but for final 3 minutes. But yeah, so Harry of Singer Instruments in Somerset, our only resource has been built to help showcase the tech identity of the Southwest. And then Marty in Westlake, how would the region market its sustainable strength? So that, I suppose, the more we join the dots, the more we connect, collaborate, understand each other, unite behind, whether it's Bristol Technology Festival, some of these kind of things, and programs and activities, that by doing those things, they almost become the resources, they become the story, the narrative, rather than sitting in the trade hall trying to sell the Southwest. We've got to kind of encourage this thriving ecosystem at all these different areas and levels, and that mix, and that feeds into the narrative. And then you've got to have perhaps Patric, one or two things that you can try and go global with, in terms of bursting out of that, or bringing people, Agile on the Beach, attracts people from all over the world, and how you kind of build on those kind of things. I think we've got 2 minutes left. I think open to anyone to sort of further reflections on any points around that. Toby.
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I've always thought Tech Southwest is such a good idea, because it's actually helping corral people. It's bringing organizations together, and it's creating that common voice, that it's communicating that narrative that the region is so interesting, diverse, great, has got so many opportunities that most people don't actually realize. Yes, you will notice that Facebook have built a data center in North Sweden because it's Facebook and it's huge. We haven't got one of those yet, but what we do have is a huge collection of lots and lots of very, very interesting businesses. Collectively, of course, in terms of the number of people they employ, the tax that they pay, they are really, really collectively really significant. And, probably more than one unicorn, although the unicorn it's far easier for the unicorn to get media attention. Collectively, through Tech Southwest, I think we can communicate that we've got several unicorns.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, look, I think we're going to have to pause because we've got final workshop to squeeze in, and then networking and open sessions at the end. So thank you so much. We lost Monika partway through. I'm not going to mention the technology and what happened there, but who knows? But thank you so much, everyone. So thank you, Peter, Marty, Patric, Sally, Toby, and Monika as well. And thanks everyone for all the comments in the chat as well. I mean, it's a really fascinating discussion. I think we encourage everyone just to stay involved and keep coming up with ideas, and the amount of things. The autumn season, for example, Bristol Tech Festival, Bath Tech Festival, the Sparkies, Tech Southwest Awards. Fingers crossed with COVID, we are going to have a busy autumn, a blended approach of virtual and others. And SETsquared Bristol did a fantastic event last week, Techspo. There's over 200 people, 30 in the room, over 170 joining virtually, some amazing pictures, and the Tech Southwest Pitch Up event. So there is lots happening, and I know everyone's really busy, but I encourage them to kind of, this is the plug, Tech Southwest Awards, join Tech Southwest, and we're looking for panelists guests, workshop ideas, just to give the right things to the community so that we can be part of that. So thanks, everyone. Thank you all. We're going to all gracefully leave and click on the sessions tab where we have more final kind of quickfire workshops running from 11:30 to 11:50. And then there's a final 10 minutes where the networking zone pings open and we can have one-to-one conversations and breathe and finally talk about the football if that's what you want to do.